Hello, I'm Matt Johnson. I'm the functional lead over projects with Program Granite and Workday. Rebecca's just asked me to present on a few things relating around projects to you. Just give me one sec.
While he's getting up, let me make a few comments about projects so you understand the frame of reference we're talking about here, okay? This is not about how to create a whole bunch of projects and stuff like that, okay? Because that's a different issue and we have a different work stream and most of you will not have access to doing that. Your role will be as a project manager. So you'll be approving spending, okay? Most of the projects involved for most of you are hosted conferences, okay? That doesn't mean that that's the way it stays further on down the line, because you may see that the functionality that's available in projects would work for some of the other things that you do, okay? So I would advise you, whilst we talk about these things, to keep that in mind and think about some of the other things about projects that might really help you in some other things. This is not going to be for go live. We're only going live with certain things in the project module, but that doesn't have to be the way it stays, okay? So while it may not seem like you have a ton involved with the project module, keep an open mind. It may be a benefit to you down the road, okay?
Okay, so like Rebecca said, it's really a select group that's using projects or will be using projects that go live in the new year. There are some groups around campus that have what are called hosted conference projects. If you have an event or a hosted conference that would require a project basically to be tracked over a year end, that would be a scenario where you would need one. Just to talk a little bit about those, project managers are the people that will approve on these hosted conference projects. Those project managers are designated from the related cost center on the project. And these project managers will approve requisitions, purchase orders, expense reports, with the exception of journals, which obviously are routed a different way. Just to demonstrate that and how the expense and that routing will happen, I was going to show you a requisition here. One sec. Okay, so we're in BYU 6. I'm just going to show you a project real quick. This is the main screen of the project here. On the role assignment, we'll call out who the project managers are. These can be assigned directly on the project. In this case, on this project, we have Rebecca and then Sean Huff, who is just talking to you as project managers. In addition, there's other project managers which roll down from the hierarchy. But let me show you the requisition now. And like was talked about a few minutes ago, you can go into the hub here. I like to use the search bar, so we'll do it from here. So create a requisition. In this case, you'll want to plug in your project number.
Where does the project number come from?
It's automatically assigned. You'll notice that the activity and the cost center were automatically populated when you selected that project. Every project is assigned to either an activity or a project, or a cost center. So it rolls up under that hierarchy.
Project is considered a driver work tag, so it pulls in that related cost center, the fund and program that is related to that. Okay, so we've got the project on the line here. Let's see what this error is about. We want to Call out the requisition type. We'll do that. We'll call it goods and services. Okay. And then again, we'll go with the non-catalog items. With equipment. I'm just gonna say grounds equipment for this. Supplier. Amazon. I'm gonna add that to my cart. Checkout. And this screen is where basically where you can review which work tags are on the line or on the transaction. I'm going to scroll here, confirm that we've got. We've got our project right there, so we're looking good. Internal memo. Okay. So like we were saying earlier, there's a project on the transaction line. The BP or the business process is going to drive that to the project manager. And show here in process, here are our project managers. Proxy in. Andrew. And then if you're the project manager, you'll just see it come in like on the top right here, this envelope here, your inbox. And that requisition will be here for you to review. Go ahead and approve. That's the gist of the advanced routing that will be taking place with the project. Rebecca did want me to show you one other thing. One sec. If you are on a hosted conference project, stop proxying here real quick. Select that project. This is our project. If you're a project manager, you'll be able to see the project. When you know this hosted conference or this event that you're hosting has run its course and the project is ready to be closed down, as a project manager, you'll be able to come in here, edit the project, and then you'll want to change the status here to ready to close. What this does is, as soon as you submit this, it's going to go to the hierarchy manager. I'm going to approve that real quick. Or I don't need to show that to you. Once it's gone through the approvals, it's going to go to Rebecca's notification box, basically as a shout out or a heads up that it's time for her to close that project down financially. That's pretty much the gist of it.
Okay, so let me talk to you a little bit about projects, okay? So we've had projects in PeopleSoft They were the alpha, the OUs that started with an alpha, right? But they really weren't project functionality. They were just another way that we separated that group of operating units. So going forward, projects is actually a module, in essence, within Workday. And the functionality that projects brings you are some things like this. If you have a activity that you are doing that some expenses are going to start in September of one year and flow to July of the next, that's a project type activity because projects don't close on an annual basis. The expenses may, but the projects themselves don't. So you have the ability then to run a report on the activity through your regular annual reports, or you can run it on a project basis for the period of time that project was going. Projects typically have a beginning and an end. That is not necessarily always true. They can be evergreen projects. You also have the ability in projects to split things further. So if you wanted to group, for instance, you have a hosted conference and you want to be able to track all the expenses associated with the advertising and promotion separately, you can create a task under the project that allows you to do that. And you can have several tasks under a project. You can have a project that is for a conference that you do every year, and you can have the project be an evergreen project and have a phase underneath it for each year and have all the tasks associated with it. So it gives you a lot of reporting capability for those types of activities where you're doing them over a year end, where you're doing multi-year, because it allows you to see the costs of that activity over time, or it allows you to see them separated by however you separated within your project, okay? So as you can see, projects are much different than projects today. Now, the other key with projects is when you set it up, you choose whether or not it's an expensable project or it's a capital project, okay? So if it's a capital project, that means that we're gonna capitalize an asset at some point. We may capitalize several assets at some point. If it's an expensable project, it acts like every other work tag. It acts like a cost center, it acts like an activity, in that the expenses go through the financial statements just as any other work tags would. Okay, so those expenses will land in the right year based on the choice. If you're capitalizing it, it goes to work in progress or CIP, however you want to call it. And then at some point, it is then either capitalized or expensed. Okay, and it may be both, depending on the situation. So there's a lot of flexibility within projects, but it also means that you have some extra work involved to get it set up. Okay, so that's why I want you to really think about the kinds of things that you do, that kind of functionality would be beneficial, because at some point in the future, after we go live, we can have conversations about things that you would like to have be a part of the project module so that you can do it, because it's not going to change anything accounting wise if you do an expensable project. It's still going to do it, but what it does is allow you additional functionality. Yeah, right.
So what do you do with if it goes over year end? What and it's really a project that has an end date in the next year. The expenses that accumulate prior to year end.
So if it's an expensable project, those are going to just flow right through to expense.
So you don't have to put them in prepaid or anything like that.
You don't. With a couple of exceptions, you know, in your case, because what you're doing is you're prepaying expenses for an event that isn't happening, there may be some things that you would need to do. But if it was truly expensive, it goes straight through.
So this sounds like a phenomenal way for us to track our study abroad. Would we set those up, or would we have to
So it depends who's gonna be responsible for them.
Yeah.
Okay? Ultimately, financial services will set up the projects for you. Where they fall will be determined by where the funding is. Because projects are gonna be associated with the cost center or activities where the funding is. Okay? Generally speaking. Having said that, let me give you a couple of things that we are going to be changing. Gifts don't have projects associated with them, okay? It causes us problems. So we will transfer funding from gifts to some other location to be able to do that. We also aren't going to capitalize assets on gifts anymore. That's out. So we're in the process of working through the assets that are on gift accounts and moving them to a better location, okay? Also, another thing that's going to be happening that we're still working through details. In PeopleSoft, lots of times, if funding came from a gift or if funding came from I'll call it an oddball source, we would capitalize things on the plant fund. We're not going to do that anymore unless it's part of the OIT or physical plant allocation of expenses in our financial statement purposes. All assets will be on the operating unit equivalent of wherever they really belong, okay? Whoever is going to be responsible for them. So there are some things in the process of assets and projects that are going to be changing slightly. And so just be aware that those are things, and we'll talk to you about them as we make those changes, just so you know. But it'll help us a lot. It'll help you because all your assets should be on OUs that you're actually responsible for and you're going to see them instead of on other OUs that I then have to separate out one by one so you can look at them, which is a real pain. So those kinds of things are going to all be changing as we make this move to Workday. We're trying to clean up a lot of little things that have crept in over the years. Okay? Yes,
So
sir.
is this the preferred way to track? Let's say you're having an event, you want to know how much it costs to be able to easily access a report after the event. Is this the preferred way for that?
If it's going over a year end, absolutely. Or if expenses are going to be had in multiple years.
Or what if not?
If not, what does it get you different than what you have? That you know, because if all of your expenses are landing in 1 year, you know,
Yeah.
you're not getting as much
So
space.
which tag is going to drive that then if we don't use the project?
It'll be either an activity or a cost center, most likely an activity. Yeah, Jason.
So they're related to what you said about gifts. There's also times when hosted conferences will utilize OIT. So there's an OIT project that bills a hosted conference. So we can't do that in Workday since we can't put a project on another project. So what would be the workaround for that?
Well, the billing can still happen on a project, on the other project. You would just do your billing normally to the other project.
But if the hosted conference is a project, you can't put a PJ on a project.
You can on the other side of the event. You're going to do billing separately. It's not your billing. You'll have one side that'll hit one project and one side that'll hit the other project. Billing is different from expenses landing on something. You'll eventually have to bill them for whatever their expenditures are, and it's going to be on their project.
We'll have to talk about that because I don't think that works.
We'll have to look at it.
We're
It'll
not
probably be
using,
a journal entry.
because we're not using the billing module. It just goes directly through whatever cost center and activity we have on the project, that's where the cost goes.
You might have to do those project ones on a journal entry instead. I'll have to look those up. Any other questions about projects? Yes.
Can a project be funded through an activity and a cost center?
Yeah, but it can only be on one of them. So you're going to either associate it with one or the other. This is common when you have multiple funding sources for a single event. And what'll happen is you will transfer the funding to one of those locations, whichever one you want to manage it.
There'll always be a cost center on project.
Brian?
So I understand your comment about if the expenses are all in one year, you can call that an activity. But if you're having students allocate their time, projects is the only place where you just have time allocated.
That's great. That's great. But we're only opening time allocation to a few people right now. We aren't going to talk about time. That's a different ball of wax. Yes.
For a project of a state conference, say we want to see if this year, which sometimes doesn't end on the calendar year, right? What's the financial situation, for example, does it have surplus? Do we just do it like with the year or the beginning date and then when?
No, your project, you can run a project report. The question is, if you have something that goes across years, but you want to see the total cost, where do you look? Well, there will be project reports, and they will look at the project as a whole, either on the task level or on the phase or on the project itself, okay? So that's why projects are valuable, because if they are running over a year, and especially if you're doing them multiple times, it makes it easier.
So, do you think it would be helpful if we put a class code? If we want to say, okay, this is for this year.
You certainly could.
Otherwise, it will be like continuation, right?
But if you're not using a project, then yes, you could use a class code to do that. I would caution you though, once you use class code, you can't use class code for any other purpose, okay? Class code is a one and done kind of thing. You can't have multiple class codes. So if you are wanting to use class code to show you something else, then you definitely wouldn't want to do it to establish a year.
What I mean is we still have a hosted conference for that conference, right? That annual conference. But for year-to-year expenses, we do class code.
You could use class code, but I would use some of the functionality in projects. I would use phase or task to take care of that. I wouldn't use class code for that. I will say also, we've discovered a handful of challenges with the use of class codes. So I would be very careful about what I chose to do with class codes, because they may have a handful of challenges that we're still trying to work through. Because they're what we call a custom work tag, and those don't have all the same powers as the delivered work tags. We discovered there's a couple of little things that we gotta find some workarounds for. So, also another thing I would mention is, with work tags, remember that work tags are going to be randomly assigned numbers with the exception of class code. That's the only one that's going to be different, okay? Everything else is a random number. Your activities, your cost centers, your projects, your assignees, everything else is randomly assigned, okay? So just keep that in mind. Any other questions about projects? Yes.
How soon will you be entertaining people who would like to do projects once we go live?
Talk to me next March. In reality, I've got to get through year end, then go live and get the financial statements done. Minor details.
If we're waiting till then, is there a way to capture what happens between January?
There is, the data will be there, and we could do a journal entry to move it to a project later if we want to. So that's not an issue. It's the timing. And quite frankly, at this point, we have so many little fires that we need to take care of that adding a big fire of opening this up to everybody right now by we'll go live just isn't going to happen. Matt and I don't have the time. Anything else on projects? I would suggest if you are interested, just start making notes about things, and then we can have a discussion later on. All right.
Thank you.